Before the COVID-19 pandemic, the end result of which we haven't yet seen, there was a notion that nothing truly historically worthy has been happening these days. Well, in today's Top 10, we're here to show you the 20th and 21st century have had lots of important events in them, and all of them have shook the world in different ways. Are you ready to learn more about them? Let's go. Number 1. The start of World War I, June 1914. Back in 1914, the people of Europe were holding their breath, waiting for something to relieve the tension that was building in the military. While there were a couple of reasons to start a war, the one that did it was the assassination of the Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo, Bosnia, by a Serbian nationalist. His murder started what would become known as the Great War, or simply World War I. It was a war across Europe that lasted 4 years, from 1914 to 1918. During the conflict, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire, the Central Powers, fought against Great Britain, France, Russia, Italy, Romania, Japan, and the United States, the Allied powers. Number 2 is the Russian Revolution, October 1917. The Russian Revolution is considered to be one of the most explosive political events of the 20th century, and it marked the end of the Romanov dynasty and the end of Russian imperial rule. During the Russian Revolution, the Bolsheviks, led by leftist revolutionary Vladimir Lenin, seized power and destroyed the tradition of Tsarist rule. The Bolsheviks would later become the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. In reality, the Russian Revolution is two different revolutions, the one that happened in February and overthrew the imperial government, and the next one in October, which put the Bolsheviks in power. Number 3 is the start of World War II in September 1939. By late August of 1939, the people of Europe had found themselves holding their breath once more, while the Soviet leader Joseph Stalin and Hitler signed German-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact. Hitler's plans to attack Poland were not new. He wanted to invade the country that both Great Britain and France were sworn to protect in case it was attacked by Germany. With the pact, Hitler made sure of two things. The first one was he wouldn't have to face two fronts once he invaded Poland. And the second one was he would have the assistance of the Soviets in the upcoming war. On September 1st, 1939, Hitler invaded Poland from the west. Only 2 days later, both Great Britain and France declared war on Germany, and World War II started. Number 4. Pearl Harbor, December 1941. Pearl Harbor is a U.S. naval base near Honolulu, Hawaii, and is known for the devastating surprise attack by the Japanese on the 7th of December, 1941. Hundreds of Japanese fighter planes descended on the base, where they managed to destroy nearly 20 American naval vessels, including 8 battleships, and over 300 airplanes. 2,400 Americans died, including civilians, and more than 1,000 were wounded. By 1941, the Axis powers held supremacy over Europe and parts of Asia. Even though Great Britain was still undefeated, it couldn't stand a chance to win without a strong ally. Pearl Harbor brought the chance for the Americans to jump into World War II, and 3 years later, to also provide the majority of manpower to free the occupied Europe. Number 5. The atomic bomb drop on Hiroshima, August 1945. The surrender of Japan seemed unthinkable and may have been impossible if it weren't for the 2 U.S. atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It started on August 6, 1945, when an American B-29 bomber dropped the world's first deployed atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima. It immediately killed about 80,000 people and then went on to kill tens of thousands over the years from radiation exposure. Only 3 days after, a second B-29 dropped another atomic bomb on Nagasaki, which killed about 40,000. A couple of days later, on August 15th, Japan's Emperor Hirohito announced the unconditional surrender of Japan. Number 6. The Indian Independence Act, August 1947. India was the second most populous nation in the world, and Britain was proud to rule over them. But after the nonviolent mass movement led by Mahatma Gandhi, the resistance of India was all too clear to ignore. After the Second World War, Britain decided it would be best to leave India, and they began the decolonization process. Indian independence was accompanied by a painful separation and the birth of a new nation, Pakistan. The separation led to painful incidences of sectarian violence, to killing and migration of millions of people who were suddenly on the wrong side of the border. Number 7. Establishment of Maoist China, 1949. The aftermath of World War II found China involved in a civil war. One side was the communist, led by Mao Zedong, and the other was the nationalist, led by Chiang Kai-shek. On October 1, 1949, Mao Zedong officially proclaimed the founding of the People's Republic of China at Tiananmen Square, which led to Chiang Kai-shek, about 600,000 nationalist troops, and about 2 million nationalist sympathizer refugees to retreat to the island of Taiwan. In December 1949, Chiang proclaimed Taipei, Taiwan, the temporary capital of the republic, and continued to assert his government as the sole legitimate authority of all China, while the PRC government continued to call for the unification of China. In June 1950, the outbreak of the Korean War led the American government to place the United States 7th Fleet in the Taiwan Strait to prevent either side from attacking the other. Number 8. The assassination of John F. Kennedy, 1963. The assassination of the 35th President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, happened November 22, 1963, during one of his visits to Dallas, Texas, while he rode in a motorcade. His accused killer was Lee Harvey Oswald, a former U.S. Marine who embraced Marxism and defected for a time to the Soviet Union. There are many conspiracy theories to think that he wasn't a lone killer, but we'll probably never know because Oswald was shot and killed by a Dallas nightclub owner while being transferred after he was taken into custody. After Kennedy's death, Lyndon B. Johnson became president, and the American involvement in Vietnam grew, leading to a conflict that would come to divide America. Number 9. The fall of the Berlin Wall, 1989. The Berlin Wall was a symbol of a so-called Iron Curtain which split West and Eastern Europe. On the one side were communist, authoritarian states, and the other side, liberal democracies. Although the wall was built to prevent East Germans escaping into West Germany, its presence came to be symbolic. It was on 9th of November 1989, 5 days after 500,000 people gathered in East Berlin in a mass protest, the Berlin Wall crumbled. Only today, one Berliner spray-painted on the piece of the wall, "Is the war really over?" The reunification of East and West Germany was made official on October 3, 1990, almost 1 year after the fall of the Berlin Wall. This iconic moment meant the Soviet Union gave up its grip on Eastern Europe. Number 10. The 9/11 terrorist attacks. It's the day that most of us who are above 30 remember where we were and what we did when we heard about it. The September 11 attacks were a series of airline hijackings and suicide attacks that happened in 2001 by 19 militants who were associated with the extremist group Al-Qaeda. It is considered the deadliest terrorist attack on American soil in U.S. history and left behind a little less than 3,000 people dead, with 2,750 people killed in New York, 184 at the Pentagon, and 40 in Pennsylvania, where one of the hijacked planes crashed after passengers attempted to retake the plane. This event changed American foreign policy and triggered an enormous effort to combat terrorism. So there you have it for today. These are the top 10 events that shook the world in modern history. Do you think we've left something out? Well, tell us down in the comments, and of course, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more amazing top 10s. We'll see you next time.